Welcome to the TeacherCast Educational Network, coming to you from the TeacherCast studios since 2011. Join us each week as we bring you the latest educational news, EdTech updates, and hottest interviews with today's most influential leaders in education. And now, for your host, Jeff Bradbury.
Hello and welcome to the TeacherCast Educational Network. My name is Jeff Bradbury, and today I have a very special show, a very special episode of Digital Learning Today. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, podcasting. We're going to decide how we can create them, how you can use them in your school, and after you've decided to make one for your community, what can you do with it next? I have a fantastic guest on today who's got a background in radio and in education. I want to bring on today my good friend, Mr. Mark Pollock. Mark, how are you today? Welcome to Digital Learning Today.
Well, thanks, Jeff. I'm glad to be here. I'm doing great.
I'm so excited to have you on today. We've been talking all about podcasting and radio. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, it's varied. So I wanted to be a broadcast journalist when I was a kid and used to watch TV and pretend that I was a news anchor. And I grew up in the 80s. So Casey Kasem was, American Top 40. So if I didn't do TV, I wanted to be in radio, and life kind of got in the way. And I ended up not even going in that direction for the time being, and worked numerous jobs in retail, and I sold radio advertising and things of that nature. So I was close to it. Last 17 years of my career, I have been in higher ed, and I've dabbled. I was on air for a handful of years on a top 40 station here in Jacksonville. I'm in Florida, and just kind of stuck with it. So when I got a professional job, right, I ended up buying a whole bunch of equipment and thought, well, I could just sit in my closet and do voiceovers for commercials. And I've voiced a ton of coursework and audio work for high schools and for colleges and for independent organizations who has training. And so it's been a fun, weird career, if you will, all over the place.
Well, there are so many school districts over the last couple of years who I've had the opportunity to work with, and many of them have started with, how do I get into the audio and video game, right? And it's either because they want to take their board of ed to that next level, or they are looking to start a morning announcements, or even in a previous position that I once held in middle school, how do I create a broadcasting curriculum? And so let's kind of talk a little bit about some of these things. You mentioned the big topic, right? And of course, whenever you're talking to a podcaster, it's, the joke is, hi, how are you? What kind of a microphone do you have? But seriously, let's kind of talk a little bit about this. If you were going to be a school district and you were looking to create a basic, middle school, high school type of recording, and I'm not talking, full YouTube studio, just I need to get some equipment out there. What do you recommend? What's on your list? What can a school district look to be purchasing?
I mean, I think Rode makes really great mics, and you've got the little thing there, even though I know that you're using a Shure SMB7, which is the same mic that I use. Here's my thought on that. When I was in the radio business, what really got me excited was, and I was there for 4 years, I was on air, the sound quality really drove me to explore different voices. It helped me explore different things that I wanted to do and gave me a chance to be creative. I personally believe that if you're going to make the investment, buy quality equipment, because what can end up happening is if you go on the cheap, which I understand, budgets are tight everywhere, then get less equipment. But if you have a quality mic, it's going to allow the kids, it's going to allow yourself that level of creativity that you wouldn't have had with poor quality. Buy used. There's some great refurbished pricing out there.
Right.
see if someone would donate. Radio stations, they get rid of their equipment after a couple of years. Try to partner maybe with a radio station in the market that would donate for your school. But quality equipment, I really do feel like is going to make a difference. And I had a cheaper mic many years ago when I started trying to do voiceover work for books and for commercials. And then I bought my Shure mic with my Focusrite and all this other stuff that I have in this room. And it's made a huge difference for me in wanting to do it.
And I love what you just said, right? Use stuff if needed.
Mm-hmm.
I of course go, I go to B&H, I go to Amazon, I go to other places like that. The radio stuff, see if there is a local radio or a college station that's looking to donate some things. There's not a huge need to have a huge budget for this. Many schools that I work with, I start with get 1 or 2 microphones, plug them right into your Chromebook, and then use a software like we're using StreamYard right now, but there's a number of other things. This doesn't have to be a huge expense. And with many schools, that's PTA funds right there. That's like, ask your parent teacher association, can everybody, grab $10 and donate for this? Suddenly you've got 2 microphones and you're off and running.
Now, this may seem like a lot to someone who's trying to generate funds or find some money. But to your point, so you and I are both using Shure SM7Bs, right? Mm-hmm. This is the same mic that most podcasters use. Shure has been, creating mics. I think Michael Jackson used a Shure SM7B for most of his studio recording, right? So it's a quality mic. I bought mine, I think it was $350 for the mic. So, and it's a huge difference from this versus the $90 one on Amazon that you're going to buy. So again, if you're going to invest and you want kids to enjoy, understand, have an urge to do something, buy quality.
The big difference I find is the younger grades, it's not buying cheap. It's buying things that bounce. And, a lot of times people ask me, like, what's a good cheaper microphone? And I'll recommend something like a snowball mic. And they would say, well, why? And I go, because it bounces, right? Somebody's going to push it off the desk, right? So something is going to happen to it. So you want to make sure that you can do that. Of course, as the microphones get, higher in value, you don't want to be dropping those things. But there's a lot of different things. And if you're looking for equipment ideas or recommendations, I'm going to put these links in our show notes. You can, of course, head on over to podcastingwithstudents.com. That's where all of my audio, my video, my tutorials, everything about classroom podcasting and video production are going to be there. So check out everything over at podcastingwithstudents.com. So, Mark, now we've got some equipment here. You are a master at trying to take your audience to that next level, trying to find ways to reach that audience. Let's pretend that for a school or for a school district, the audience is their community. Mm-hmm. What ways are available right now, for free or for not, that a school district can be creative in reaching and taking advantage of that audience that may or may not be able to, physically be at board meetings, at concerts, at football games, etc.? How do school districts reach their audience?
Well, I would ask you now, being part of a school district, what are they doing now to gain your excitement and provide information to you and get you engaged? What's your district doing right now?
My district right now has tried everything from, Zooming board meetings, which is one thing, to doing live streaming at sporting events and music events and things like that. But in order to do something like that successfully, one has to be, not only having the video to do all that, like the bandwidth at the event, but you also have to be working with your communications department, because if a tree falls in the woods and nobody hears it, it doesn't make a sound. So you have to say to your whole communications department, hey, we got a game, we got a concert, we got a whatever. We'd like to live stream this. We got a board meeting. Can you start to throw out the Facebook stuff, the tweets, the whatever? Chances are a school district has some of these things in place for infrastructure, but how many parents are actually subscribed to the YouTube channel, let's just say, to then get the notification that these things are happening, or are going on to the school's website in case that video happens to be embedded onto a news post or a page or a something like that. So you really need to have multiple arms of your leadership team working to make this happen on a regular basis, not just, hey, it's graduation.
So I would back up from that just one step and say, well, what does success look like? Why are we doing this? What are some expectations that we have around this? What is the percentage of parents that we want live streaming? What is the percentage of parents that we want involved in X, or students involved in Y, or our board involved in this? And really map out almost a business plan, but it's a communications plan, and it has success metrics around it. We want, out of the 100% of the people who aren't there, our goal is to have 35% log in from our sporting events. So my son just finished his season of lacrosse, and towards the end, they started live streaming those games, and it worked maybe 50% of the time. You had to pay for that service. So not only did you have to subscribe and pay, now they've had to provide refunds because it didn't work very well. And so I think about the school who thought, well, that's a really great idea, we should do that, but then was unable to execute. And sometimes that's even worse. So I would suggest to any organization, come up with your plan first. What do you want to achieve? And then think about in what ways you're going to be able to get those parents or those students or that board excited about the things that you're doing in order for them to subscribe. I will tell you, when I was back in radio, seems like 100 years ago, I sold both the advertising and I was on air. And back then, we got over, I think the statistic was over 1,000 advertisements a day came across our eyeballs or our ears, right? And that could be from logos, that could be driving the car and hearing commercials, whatever. You heard over 1,000 advertisements. I'm sure my numbers are way wrong at this point. So you can only imagine now, we didn't have social media back then. You can only imagine now how much noise we have in the market. And so, yes, your school now has a YouTube channel. Yes, your school has a really interactive web page. Yes, you have an Instagram page. Yes, you're sending another email. Mm-hmm. I probably at my job at American College of Education get, 100 and some odd emails a day. So if you're sending out communication via email, sure, I'm going to look at it at some point because you're my children's school, but it might not be top of the email chain. So I'll circle back and just say having really strong purpose around what you're doing to get through the clutter will be really important.
Since you mentioned advertisement, what are your thoughts or suggestions for schools who are looking to bring that community experience together? Here's our podcast, here's our Board of Ed. Should it be the Board of Ed sponsored by Joe's Pizza? Or should we be keeping those things separate?
I think as long as Joe's Pizza is not influencing the education and they're just sponsoring whatever that is, there's not a problem in that. I don't think school districts are in need of money. So, we're talking about buying equipment, right? Nothing's free. And I don't think sponsorship is wrong personally. And that's just my opinion. I think if Joe's wants to sponsor something, well, good for them. I think that's great. The kids need sponsorship. Again,
I would agree with that too. You sponsor this, it goes to a scholarship, or it goes to the club, or it goes to the group, or a stipend, or whatever it happens to be. But definitely not Joe's, sitting on the board making decisions and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think as long as you keep that stuff separate. We've had lots of parents at my kids' school where they own a business, they're really successful, and they've provided tennis rackets for children who can't afford them. And this story will resonate with everybody. Every person who listens to this podcast knows that company or companies or individual that donates and provides when others just don't have. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Just again, as long as it doesn't influence business decisions, there's no problem.
One of the things that I miss from a couple of years ago when I was creating my broadcasting team was just that team sense, right? Mm-hmm. Going out with those kids, trying to figure it out, going to a venue, putting the cameras together, the wires, the Wi-Fi, just doing all of that, and then sitting back and watching them do it at an event, and then watching them, I with my orchestra background, it's no different. You're conducting this huge group, and then one day they're in a string quartet, and you're just there to watch. And we got that same thing in my teaching position, where once we had that going, it's no, you guys go to the board meeting, or you guys go to this. And my role was simply just hover over and supervise, let them do all the work. I know that opened up different opportunities for them once I passed them up into the high school areas that they might not have been used to. Like podcasting, video club, learning how to edit, learning how to go into things. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your background with that in mind, because not many students are thinking that they can use their voice for their career. You had said that you've done voiceovers and books and stuff like that, and obviously, the radio voice. How does one find their way into those different categories of employment?
That's a really great question. I think one, it goes back to they don't think that they can. There's this idea, and I think it's promoted through social media, that something has to be perfect before it's produced, before it goes out. And I would just say it doesn't have to be perfect at all. Ed Sheeran was on an interview the other day, and he was talking about how he could not sing when he was 14 years old. And he brought up a YouTube video of him singing at 14, and it was really bad. And he said by 19, he was a platinum record, right? I think just do it. If you have an interest in using your voice, or being an actor, or being a teacher, or being a doctor, just put yourself in those situations. I mean, it's the same advice that I give my own kids, is surround yourself with people who do that thing, right? When I wanted to get into radio when I was younger, and I had a lot of family health issues that prevented me from originally going into this as a career. But I surrounded myself. I volunteered at the radio station. I did voiceover work for free. I went to events where radio stations were, and I talked to the DJs, and I called in when they had radio contests, and I did everything that I could to meet and know those people and learn from those people. And so if anybody has an interest in getting into that space, there's space for you. You just have to understand and be passionate about it, and be okay with you're going to suck at the beginning. It's hard. You're just not going to do well, and that's okay. Keep doing it.
I love that analogy. And oftentimes when a new podcaster comes up and asks me, like, how do I do this? How do I get good? I'm like, your first 50 episodes are just going to be your first 50 episodes. Like, learn how to walk, learn how to run, learn how to tie your shoe, learn how to edit your own stuff, learn how to edit it badly, edit it good, like all of those different things. And I think for any student right now, it's so easy to pick up their phone, their Chromebook, their whatever, and create their own futures, create their own YouTube channels, create their own reels, create their own shorts, whatever it happens to be. And just, and being the educator there, your job is to kind of start to steer them a little bit of, okay, try this. Here's a couple tips, tweak this a little bit, but just keep pushing. Right. And I'm doing that here with my own 10-year-olds. Like, just try something and run with it.
Always. And there's so many Instagram or whatever conversations about failure. Fail a lot. You're not going to learn anything from success. You're only going to learn by messing it up, and you really can't mess it up that bad, right? Like, I think the number one thing is pick a subject that you're interested in, or subjects that you're interested in. Do some research, be thoughtful about it. Think about what other people are putting out there. Think of differentiators. How are you going to be different in the market? What are you bringing to the table? It's like any business. Right. When you think about starting a business, I started an animal hospital many years ago. And one of the things that I thought about when starting the animal hospital is, well, how are we any different than any other animal hospital that exists? And here at ACE, I think about, well, what do we do that's going to be different than any other university or college that's out there? How can we be different? How can we support differently? How can we educate differently? How can, whatever the case may be. And so it takes a little bit of thought. I would always suggest just put a little thought into it, and be resilient. And when people make fun of it, and they will, and when you mess up and you're embarrassed, because you will be, just know it's going to be fine. It's all going to be fine.
It sounds like you have a couple good stories. Do you have anything that you're remembering right now? Maybe that's coming to mind of a time that you succeeded, or maybe some advice that somebody gave you that you're like, okay, I always think about that as I start the show. What's been some of those little golden gems that you've kept with you over the years?
Gosh, I have so many embarrassing fails. I don't know that I remind myself a lot of them. I don't know that I have them on the tip of my tongue to say, oh, I remember when I really messed this up. But I remember the feeling. I don't remember the events and the nervousness of, ooh, I'm going to mess up. I'm going to say the wrong thing. People are going to judge this. Two people are going to judge that. I'll give you an example of being okay with messing up. One of my dearest friends, and sadly he recently passed away. He worked at a bank during the day and was a professional musician at night. He invited me to a concert that he was playing at. He was a fill-in drummer for this band, and I went to go see him. And again, I mean, he's played in London. He's played for all sorts of bands. He really a professional drummer. I am not a professional musician. He came off after the first set, and he's like, "Oh, did you hear that?" And I said, oh, Michael, that was incredible. I can't believe you just learned all of those songs this week. He learned like 50 songs in 1 week. I'm like, you were amazing. And he said, no, the second song, did you hear? I hit the wrong beat. I'm like, no one heard it, buddy. No one heard that. And you hear it. It resonates with you. That failure resonates with you, but it doesn't define you. In fact, I will say if you're not failing, you're really probably not trying hard enough. I do have a story, Jeff. This just came to mind. I was in commercial real estate for a while, and I remember my boss telling me at the time that if I didn't get kicked out of a building, I wasn't trying hard enough. And so I was passing around my business card. I actually got kicked out of the building that I worked in. And he had to come downstairs and pick me up because security said that I was soliciting and I wasn't allowed to solicit in the building. And he laughed and then he took me to lunch. But that's kind of stuck with me is, if you've not embarrassed yourself, if you've not failed, if you've not messed it up, you're probably not trying.
That's an awesome story.
It was pretty ridiculous. I had my business card with the address of the place on it. I had my card key for the elevator, and they're like, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to be in the building. Like, I work here.
That is an awesome story. And those stories only come because you're out there trying. You're out there with those hustles. And even when I'm looking at my own kids, I ask them the question, like, what's your hustle? Like, what are you doing? How are you trying to get your name out there, your brand out there? Even the kids that I'm currently teaching in middle school, we're talking about building that brand. How do you create something for yourself? And it's easy for them now. You've got that little microphone, you've got that computer, you've got that Chromebook, you've got whatever it happens to be. Start to put things together for yourselves. And as a school, we've been talking for years, audio, video, YouTube, whatever. This is the way for your school to tell their story, to make sure that all the good stuff is out there, whether it be the orchestra concert or the Board of Ed or the art show or whatever it happens to be. Put a camera in some of your students' hands, tell them to go take a bunch of pictures of all the art. Now you start to do, small, quick videos. They don't have to have any sound, just a little background track. Now you're putting all your communication, but in the hands of your students and letting them tell the story of your school district. I think that's an amazing thing to do.
And you don't know where that's going to lead, right? You don't know what you're going to create by putting that in their hands, and their future could open up because you said, you should go do this. When I was in high school, Colin Powell was going around, and I don't think he was running for president. I don't remember. It was a long time ago, but I got an opportunity through school to go interview him. I went to parochial school. And so I asked him, I thought about, well, what am I going to ask Colin Powell, right? And we were talking about school tax credits. And one of the things that I had asked him was, would students who are in parochial school get a tax credit? And he was shocked that this kid asked him this question. I will tell you that even though I had always wanted to go into broadcasting, that cemented it for me at the time. And you just don't know. I mean, you give a kid a camera and a microphone and you tell them to go do this. It's also creating a really cool brand for your school, for your district. I think we talked earlier about how do you grow almost a fan base and people getting and interacting. I don't know that they want to see me talking about the district. They want to see their kid talking about the district. They want to see, I don't watch my kid's lacrosse game online because I want to see the coach. I watch it because I want to see my kid. And so you give my kid a microphone, I'm going to watch. You give a bunch of kids microphones and the ability to be artistic. And, maybe your school doesn't have a very robust arts program right now. This is a great way to build creativity in this space. Warren Buffett said, and this was a while ago, he said that he would pay anyone $120 some odd thousand a year if any kid $120,000 a year if they became really great communicators, because he felt that communication, I think we talked about this maybe before the recording or after it started, that you just can't communicate. What a great way to use social media, to use what they're already got in their hand to go create something. And quite honestly, and I know I'm rambling here for a second, but the cameras on our phones are better than a lot of cameras that we used to walk around and actually hold and carry. So go use your phone. I have a lavalier mic over here. I can hook that into my phone and clip it and walk around. And the lavalier mic I bought on Amazon for $29. Cheap.
Most people don't remember that, right? Like you're if you're lucky and you're on a Mac Air or something, like it's a 720 camera. Your phone has a high def retina display. Like all of your stuff that you're carrying around in your pocket, or the kids you're carrying around in their pocket, is really good stuff to use. Show them how to use it. So, Mark, before I let you go here, I want to get your advice. If you're a school district leader listening to this and you're sitting there going, how do I start? Who do I look for in an instructor? What are some of those things that a school district might want to be thinking about when taking this first step into building out a communications program that might be student run or teacher and student run? But what are some of those things that a school district could be thinking about?
I mean, it's I think probably pretty easy to go online and see what other districts are doing and reach out. I'm sure that another district would be happy to share the things that they're doing in their district and what they've learned and where they failed and where they're succeeding. I'm sure you wouldn't mind if they reached out to you.
Not at all.
And said, hey, I'm interested in doing this. I've got X budget and I want to be as creative as possible. What are one or two things that I can do to get started? But the beauty is we can even look internationally. What are schools in Europe doing? Are they doing anything? Is there anything that we can steal from them? It's called CASE, copy and steal everything, right? So I would start with that. Do some research, and I would start with a plan. What do you want to achieve with this? Start there, and then find people who are doing it and call them. Don't be fearful. If anybody wanted to call me and ask me questions, I might not know the answers, but I'm happy to brainstorm. I think that's the thing. People are afraid of reaching out to other folks. Don't be. People want to share. People want to talk about the things that's worked for them or not worked for them. Don't be hesitant.
I think that's the best advice. Don't be hesitant, right? Like, just try something. You can put one toe in the water. You can put both feet in the water. Mark, if anybody does have any questions about getting into broadcasting, getting into audio, video, voiceovers, how can somebody find you?
I sent earlier my Instagram. I don't have a lot on my Instagram. I got hacked and most of it got deleted. So I just started repopulating that the other day. So it's going to be Meek, but Instagram's one way. LinkedIn is another. If you have an interest in higher education, I'm happy to talk about that. But yeah, Instagram or LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach me.
We're certainly going to have all the links to all the great stuff that Mark is doing also from American College of Education over on this. So check out all the great stuff over at teachercast.net/podcast. All of our episodes can be there. And of course, if you're looking for more information about how to use audio and video in your classrooms, you can head on over to podcastingwithstudents.com today and check out all of our archives. Mark, one more time, thank you guys so much. And thank you for being a part of the TeacherCast Educational Network. On behalf of Mark and everybody here on TeacherCast, my name is Jeff Bradbury, reminding you guys to keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.
You've been listening to the TeacherCast Educational Network, hosted by Jeff Bradbury. Please reach out to the show with all of your questions on Twitter @TeacherCast or online at www.teachercast.net. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And please take a moment to write a review in the App Store.